Hey guys, Dr. Mathis here, back with some more of our Sons of Levin's Blue Jays franchise. This is taken from a live stream, so that's why it's not as high quality normally that we have, but did this from our off-season live stream. We're gonna start with the playoffs. Here's what it looks like in the end of the last episode. We got Minnesota and Boston going off. Houston waiting for that winner. The Yankees and White Sox. Then over in the NL, it's the Mets and Cubs. The NLDS wild card though is San Diego and Cincinnati, and whoever wins that plays the Dodgers. This one was a crazy offseason and a crazy playoff, because we do have some craziness to look over on the roster, and that is the fact that we had a lot of players bat over 250. Our plans though is going to be the fact that Kyle Schwarber played great when we traded for him, even though he got a Gold Glove out in left field. I think he could play as our everyday catcher, and in that case that makes Reese McGuire and a little bit of Danny Jensen, who did get hurt, and that's why we ended up trading for Schwarber, really on the trade block. They are under team control at that point. Kirk becomes really the reserve guy, and I want to get Roddy Tells more up in the lineup, but that's not always how it works. Randall Grichuk getting older, up in age, and I think I want to make a change. He didn't really play as much with the outfield and Schwarber, but I think our infield is pretty solid at this point. Brendan Rodgers did get injured as well, which kind of hampered our idea of what we were going to do on the infield. But George Springer locked up for a very long 39 bombs, 104 RBIs. Gurriel the same thing, 31 bombs and 107 RBIs. Those guys, those two just went off this year. But unfortunately, it didn't really turn into a playoff berth. And that was one of the things that we need to do to get better on this roster, is our pitching and more consistent hitting around, after our 1 through 5. Because our 1 through 5 did spectacular. Vlad had one of the best batting averages in the league at .312. But it didn't translate into anything big when it came to batting in that 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th positions. It really just struggled in there. And so it was just our first 4 or 5 that really batted well. Our legends did pretty well. Bitchette, Biggio, and Guerrero. Gurriel was good with that. Grichuk, though, didn't really see a lot of playing time. Like I said before, has good power, and I think at 29 years old, I think he could also be some good trade bait in here. But at the end of the day, we're still a very young team, and that's one of the things that we have to remember, is we are growing, but I think we are in our window where some of those guys that are 27 to 29, maybe 30, have the opportunity to get up there and play at a level that can help us in that window. One thing also is Santiago Espinal didn't really play much, only in 30 games, but I don't think he's a guy that's going to be at the majors going into next year. And same thing with Gabriel Moreno. He's a guy that I don't think is going to be at the majors. He needs more development. It's much of a Sean Murphy from our A's franchise. It's much like that, where he is good defensively, but hitting, he could sorely impact the fact that we cannot get any hits in that 6 through 9 position. And we don't want to continue that issue long term. So that's really the roster and the ideas I have going into this offseason. Brendan Rodgers, I do want in the rotation. batting around. But here in the playoffs, we had a World Series. It ended up being the White Sox and the Dodgers. The Dodgers won the first game, but after that, the White Sox just went off. And we have a win for this one. It is the White Sox defeating the Dodgers. Real life, this could be something that could actually happen because the White Sox pitching staff is doing fantastic. But hey, I've seen it a couple times in franchise. And it's nice to see a team other than the Astros face the Dodgers. For the retirements, we didn't really have a lot of retirements, just young or really old players that really didn't have the ability. Some of the key guys that did retire in here, you'll see Kurt Suzuki, who gets snubbed from being a Hall of Famer. Pujols did not actually retire, so we don't see him in the inductees as well after this one. But not a lot of movement. Junior Guerrero also retiring, but not too much around the league. See here, no inductees, like I had mentioned, so kind of a shocker. I think at some point we should see some inductees. So going into the offseason, we were going to make some staff changes, but at this point, I think we're going to roll with what we have and go into kind of re-signing some of our exclusive free agents. Cavan Biggo, just not great in the times that we saw him. Neither were the rest of the pitchers, so we're going to move on there. We do go ahead and give a contract to Schwarber, and so we will see that re-signing later on in the offseason. It's pretty difficult not to have a guy like that re-sign. And then we end up putting Zach Logue on the 40-man roster to protect him from the Rule 5 draft. We do decide that Joey Murray doesn't need to be on there. Kind of an idea, but I mean, it was one or the other, and I like Zach Logue more. As for looking at through arbitration, we got a lot of arbitration guys. The key players, to kind of skim through this really fast, that we gave arbitration to was Tyler Glasnow, Trent Thornton, who, while under team control, we can actually use him for some trade. Vladimir Guerrero, Roddy Tells, Cavan Biggo, Teoscar Hernandez. And two of the key guys that we saw a lot last season is AJ Cole and Baraki. They were not given a contract at this point. You see Ryan Baraki. Didn't really like the fact that he had a 5.74 ERA in that whip, almost a 2. So we go ahead and move on from those two. We do end up giving Jansen as well. So going into tendering contracts, obviously Alek Manoah, the rookie of the year, we have to give him a contract. Some of the other notables at this point is we do give Zach Logue. Obviously, we put him on a 40-man roster. We want him to be a part of this franchise long term. Nate Pearson, Jordan Romero, some guys that we want to develop going into the pitching staff. Colin Proch, who was our closer, as well as Saul Dyer, who's going to be playing more of a relief pitcher. Gabe Moreno, who we are kind of getting together at catcher. Woods Richardson, who we know in the next couple of years is going to be up at the majors. And then Miguel Geraldo, another prospect that I think is developing decently down in the minors. And I think he could be a guy that comes up and is a platoon player up at the majors. The biggest thing is we have a lot of our players at the major set. This is a very good team. The team just needs to play up to its potential. That's one of the issues that we've seen in this franchise and also in our A's franchise is, well, they have the ability to do something, they just aren't doing it. So those are the big ones in the contract re-signings. This one kind of goes through a little fast. Not a lot of players that we end up giving contracts to. I tend to sign them all because at this point, well, it's the first off season. So then we finally go into free agency and we see Freddie Freeman and a couple of big names out here. One of the biggest things we weren't going to do is we weren't going to give any offers to any qualifying offers that were made. Later on, we do see a couple of them drop off. I do take a look at Javi Baez as well. And we have a couple of guys that could really go in for more constant pitching. So we're looking for that in our bullpen and our starting pitching. But also in the fact that we just need better batting around. So Scherzer did have the qualifying offer, but later, I didn't know that you could actually do this, but later the Nationals go ahead and pull that qualifying offer, and he becomes a potential idea for us to make a play. It is the first day, so not a lot of offers are out. At this point, you tend to only see the AI. I think in the future, the first day I will end up simming, because we kind of don't have a lot of offers to compete against. Some of the big bids that we do have in this first day is bullpen arms. So Sean Doolittle, a guy who is 35, we just want him to come in for 1 year and, well, try to solidify something, and we can make some changes if we need to. With a 3.61 ERA. Joakim Soria, we do give him a contract. He wasn't in a closer role last year. I think he was in a setup. But I think that he can be a guy that comes in and at least does some decent work for us. As you can see, there's not much out there, not even anyone that we can develop, as we do have a couple developmental players that we do sign for the next season in the future, but not a lot. What worried me with a guy like Pedro Strop and some of the other ones, they didn't really play last year, so there was no way to gauge them. For catcher, there's not a lot there, so the Schwarber idea is the one we're going to go with. At first base, we really just had Freddie Freeman, then it dropped off from there. I was looking for some DH potential. Zimmerman was the one that caught my eye. Same thing with Edwin Encarnacion, but from there, we're just going to go with what we have on the roster. At second, again, not much here. Jonathan Villar and Chris Taylor. We've already done the whole D. Gordon route, and that's something I want to do differently in this one. At third base, I wanted to see if we can get a reserve guy, or at least someone that could back up, but nothing there. But at short, though, we have a lot of guys that can play multiple positions in the infield. And I had this idea of maybe Javi Baez can come in and we can change some things around. But first, I'm going to look through the rest of the free agency, and not much out in the outfield either. The biggest one being McCutchen that caught my eye, but for 1 year and he wanted like $18 million. It's just not one that I wanted to give him that big, massive contract. At center, I did see Mark Canha, a guy that could be a rotation platoon guy. I do like Mark Canha. He played a lot of reserve over the past couple of years. So we go ahead and send him an offer. And Nelson Cruz, pointing him out, but we're not going to go this route again. I want to actually have a more rounded roster, and I want a DH. So going into the first day, this is what we have. 4 developmental players with Luis Colorado, Emmett Munoz, and the like. Trying to develop them. And our rookies, we do get Schwarber, so that is our idea for catcher. Here is our rookie that is going to be up at spring training. We'll see what he can do if he can stay on the roster. We might be bumping a couple players around. Did have Marine Willis in the stream. Mentioned Alderaan Simmons, and I missed him going through the first time. And I think Alderaan Simmons, a guy that's very consistent, batting up in the 290s to 300s. I think he could be a guy that can come in and give us some good bats on the back half of our batting order. We do give Baez a contract. Pretty easy contract in here. I want to up my defense in the infield, but also the fact that Baez can come in and I think he can actually give us something in the rotation, in the batting rotation. Here we're looking more at what we can do for trades, and I thought about trading Waijin Ryu. Probably mispronouncing that, but I did like his walk per nines down there, and it seemed more so that he had a lot of quality starts, and the issue was not getting the run support when he did start. He should have had around 15 to 16 wins this season, but it ended up only translating to 11 and 9. So we do look at some of the guys in the trade. We're not going to be trading Tyler Glasnow or anything, so don't be afraid. But we're looking at how some of the pitchers fared, and Glasnow the same thing. 13 quality starts, a decent whip, a decent ERA, but just didn't get the hit support. Does have to bring his walks per 9 down and his strikeouts per 9 up. But we decided to sim some days in here to get it moving. And Javier Baez, let's go, does sign with the Blue Jays. So that's going to be one where we move around the infield. Christian Vasquez goes to the Cubs. And going through the menu, had to see if we had any more signings that didn't pop up. Hakeem Soria does sign with us. We got a lot of the prospects that we wanted to sign. Brad Hand goes to the Indians. Michael Conforto to Oakland. And Roberto Perez also to Oakland, trying to figure out that Sean Murphy issue. Corey Kluber also to Oakland, so a lot of move out there. And we have Noah Syndergaard coming within our division and reinforcing the Red Sox. So the division just got much, much more difficult. And that's a huge signing. I'm going to see if we ended up signing anyone else that didn't pop up for us. We got Harrington. Sean Doolittle does sign, so does Mark Canha and Alderaan Simmons. So we do look for a trade Reese McGuire and Randall Gruchek. And I saw Jace Fines here. Could be a good pitcher for us later on. Developmental guy. Maybe a long relief. But going through here, I saw one name, and I had to do it. It was for the Angels. Shohei Ohtani. And we have to make this trade. I want to see if we can actually pull Shohei Ohtani and get him in the Hall of Fame as well. And so we do eat a contract with Justin Upton that's large that we might have to turn later. But hey, it happens. We get Shohei Ohtani. And then here I see Max Scherzer doesn't have that qualifying offer. And I look at it, it's a one-year deal. We can spend all of our cash. We're not playing the Moneyball series in this one. And so I'm thinking that we can go out with a one-year deal and give him 20 to 25 million and actually get him for at least 1 year. We ended up giving him 2 years in 23 because that's what he wanted. And we do get Max Scherzer. So maybe he pitches until he's 29 for the Jays. We have to make a couple of roster moves here before we go further. We do have a couple of trades though. Brandon Lowe trying to replace Baez as he moves, and the Royals, or actually the Rays, get Jason Hayward and Alec Mills. Alec Mills was one of the best pitchers in the league. And the D-backs making some moves with Corey Seager and, wait for it, Carlos Correa. So a lot of movement in the AL. This was a trade by the Twins that I was obviously confused, getting Seth Romero, KJ Harrison, and Humberto Murillo for Josh Donaldson. I just don't know. So we have the Rule 5 draft, and we made that decision earlier with Joey Murray. He does get drafted in Rule 5 by the Indians. But we saw a couple of names out here that were intriguing. Jared Egoff, which was one, but 29 years old. But I see J.C. Clooney and Jace Vines. So we thought about Jace Vines in free agency. But seeing J.C. Clooney out here, a guy that's 78 overall, and I looked at our pitching staff, and we didn't have anyone that could be a long relief that I relied on. So we go ahead and look through. So that's the biggest thing here. Thornton did not do very well when he did pitch for us, and he might be a guy that we turn later. And I don't want to take any of our rookies and kind of hurt their confidence. So we do go ahead and take J.C. Clooney. Mitt Warefield is dealt from the Royals of the Giants, and McGee and Caleb Berenger go to the Royals. So a decent trade there. And then we are going to make a trade of our own because of the contract of Justin Upton was massive. We are going to trade Trent Thornton. And since we do have the movement at catcher, Danny Jensen is the guy, the odd man out. I want to go with Kirk. And to sweeten the deal, we do add one more name to it as I'm going through. Of course, we did forget Justin Upton there. But we do make a trade with the Indians for Bradley Zimmer, Tyler Freeman, and Eloy Amaya. Biggest thing is Freeman and Amaya are good prospects that we can develop, and, well, I think they could be guys in the bullpen later. So that ends up being the offseason wrapped up. We'll go into a lot of storylines in Season 2, going through how our rotation is going to look. If you didn't know, you can have a pitcher be your DH if they're at number 2. So, no matter what, Shohei Ohtani is going to be our number 2 pitcher. But we're going to start with Scherzer, Ohtani, Glasnow, Ryu, and Alek Manoah as our rotation. Our bullpen's got a lot better, and I think we have a good season ahead of us. For the changes in the position, so I go ahead and move Bo Bichette, his position, over to third. Baez is going to move at short. Biggio is at second. Guerrero is at first. Hernandez is going to be out in left. We'll have Springer, of course, playing center. And Gurriel will be at left and Hernandez will be in right. When we have times where Ohtani does have to pitch, because you can't have a DH who pitches, we're going to have Alderman Simmons be the batter for those games. So we have a pretty solid batting lineup at this point. I'm pretty happy with how this offseason went. So looking at the cash, we're going to be spending some of the surplus to get some prospects and fill the minor league roster. But you see here, we're not in a lot of cap issues. We'll have $40 million that drop off going after next season. So looking at the prospects here, Bassone's at 2, Corey Lee's at 1 for the entire league. We do see as we go down, the Yankees have a couple in here. Woods Richardson is at 11, still developing here. He's going to be a AAA to start the season. But a lot of players that we could see at the MLB level. I don't know if they'll stay at the MLB level because it is spring training, but at least a lot of them are getting work at this point, which is nice to see. Michael Busch for the Dodgers up here. Rick Thomas for the Tigers. So there's going to be a lot of prospects up that we might see throughout the spring training time frame. We also have one more on here. I think he's around 47 or so, and it's going to be Gabriel Moreno. So he's still progressing. He's definitely not ready from a hitting standpoint to be at the majors. I don't want a Sean Murphy 2.0 happening where we're severely lacking in the batting department, but he's such a good defensive player that he helps you out on the field. So I don't want that to occur, and we got him locked up for 3 more years anyway, so there's no rush there. One thing that we are going to look at next is some of the big prospects that have been signed around the league. Looking at our division, Alec Mills, secretly one of the best pitchers last year. 2.98 ERA, 196 innings, a 1.25 whip, 22 quality starts. The Cubs just didn't give him the run support. So I think he could be a guy in there. The Yankees, of course, just getting better. Even though Kluber leaves, Garcia just steps right in, and there is no drop-off in this pitching staff, if any. Garcia did have some starts last season, so there was some injuries on the staff itself, but hey, still 140 innings. That's a big one for them. With Chris Sale and Noah Syndergaard, the Red Sox, are just so much better. Jimmy Nelson coming over, didn't pitch last year, but coming over from Milwaukee, looks like he had an injury, likely required surgery, so he didn't actually play. So the biggest things we do have is, I think we are in that window. Baez did not bat very well last season. In 2021, did have 76 RBIs, 21 home runs, but had 136 strikeouts. That's a lot of strikeouts, although it's actually less than what he's had in his career. So that's at least a positive going in. And he had a positive WAR, but the Cubs just didn't give him the deal that he was looking for. And I don't know how he's always so cheap when you go into the offseason in the first year. He's never really signed. The Cubs never really get him. It's the strangest thing. So that will do it for this video. We do have spring training coming up in the next one. I will live stream that. This is going to be out on Monday, so we will live stream that episode on Tuesday. We'll shoot for noon, so it'll be tomorrow. For all of you, when you do see this, noon tomorrow, CST will be going through spring training. We'll see Max Scherzer. We'll see a lot of the guys from the minors come up and play. We'll make some maneuvers to see those guys, especially Kobayashi. I really want to see how good he is in the batting department. And we will see some of the new additions, including some Shohei Ohtani DH, which is going to be fun. His swing is just so good in this game, and I wonder how many I'm going to bang. The goal is 35. Let's say 30 home runs by the All-Star break. That would mean 60 in the year. So that's the goal. We'll see if we can do it. Thank y'all for joining me. Don't forget to leave a like below, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in that live stream on Tuesday at noon. Later, guys.